Food Denver. We work on good, clean, and fair food for all, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for our panel discussion on the intersection of food and culture. It is part of our Food Ethos Denver, or FED workshops that we run, where we're just working on classes, workshops, and panel discussions where we are helping to create a more sustainable food system by teaching you ways to be a more conscious consumer. So I just wanted to thank you all for gathering as a community tonight, and to just honor our panelists. I'm very humbled that all of you have shown up and are here to share their own unique stories and truths and passions about what they do in our community. Sorry, it's like coming in and out. Okay, and now it is an honor to introduce our moderator for the evening, Adrienne Miller, AKA the Soul Food Scholar, two-time James Beard Award winner, recovering attorney, and certified barbecue coach. Adrienne is featured in the Netflix hit High on the Hog: How African American Cuisine Transformed America. And lucky for Slow Food Denver, he is also serves on our advisory board.
Okay, yep. Thank you, Lily. Good evening, everybody. So good to see you out tonight. My tagline is dropping knowledge like hot biscuits. So I think our panelists are definitely going to do that tonight. So let me introduce them. They will give a wave when I call their name. If you could hold your applause until everybody is introduced, that would be great. So our first panelist is Vivi Lemus of Convivio Cafe. Vivi is the co-owner and socia of Convivio Cafe. She was born in Guatemala City and has lived in Colorado for over 20 years and worked in nonprofit organizations. Along with business partner Kristen, they opened Convivio Cafe, the first fully bilingual cafe, women-owned space sourcing Guatemalan coffee directly from farmers who grow, roast, and package at origin. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Sashaline Nguyen, one of the three owners of Denver's first Vietnamese coffee shop, Tea Cafe. Along with her two sisters, they strive to spotlight Vietnamese coffee culture with specialty, handcrafted menus and events, all inspired by Asian ingredients, to ultimately curate a safe space that fully nurtures both creativity and individuality without questioning the legitimacy of one's identity. We're also thrilled to have another Slow Food Denver board member join us this evening, Vanita Patel. She is one of the two co-founders of Switch Gears Farm, a small-scale vegetable farm located in Longmont, Colorado. She says, quote, "Most people envision a farmer to be someone who likes to spend their days outdoors, often playing in dirt. That's not me. I'm a different kind of farmer. I focus on the behind-the-scenes aspect of farming that can be done from an air-conditioned space. Marketing, administrative, and relationship building." All right. Adding another layer to this conversation is Asia Dorsey. She worships the sun, ear to the soil, and she heeds the instruction of mineral, microbial, and botanical beings. She uses her gift of pattern recognition as a nutritional therapist and bioregional root worker, and is the founder of Bones, Bud, and Botany. I love that. A healing consultancy firm committed to creating embodied liberation through food and herbal medicine education. Next, we are excited to have Ben Jacobs of Tocabe join us for this conversation. Ben is a member of the Osage Nation and co-founder of Tocabe, an American Indian eatery and Tocabe Indigenous Marketplace. Ben is a chef, restaurateur, and food aggregator. And then last but certainly not least, Alberto Rodriguez of Dos Caras, which is a concept influenced by Mexican cuisine from the state of Michoacan. I practiced that. I knew I was going to mess it up, so that's why I handed him the mic. The business is run by Alberto and his brother Alejandro, and the name translates to two faces. Their goal is to put ancestral techniques at the forefront of their cuisine. They utilize ingredients native to Mexico. Their food is comida de rancho, which means what is accessible and sustainable to them in Colorado. Mara King was also going to join us tonight, but she cannot make it. So this rounds out our panel. So please show some love to our panelists. All right, so for this first question, I'm going to ask everyone to answer this, and we'll just pass the mic down and get all y'all's input. All right, so I'm a person known for faking the funk. So that's a joke. All right, so my first question is, what is authentic cuisine, and who decides what authentic is? Why don't you start us off?
Hey, thanks for coming out, everyone. Appreciate it. To define something that's authentic is kind of difficult. Your, like anybody else's upbringing of a Mexican household is going to be different to my Mexican upbringing. It's both very authentic to both of us respectively. I think the common ground between people within a culture is going to be the tradition that makes it up. So ancestors who have been doing things for generations and generations definitely influence us and kind of like lay the groundwork for what we do on a day-to-day basis. In a contextual, more contemporary setting, I believe people who make up that culture and who wear it on their sleeve on a day-to-day essentially get to define what is authentic to them.
I thought a lot about this, and then it's really hard to kind of define it when it comes to how I try and honor ingredients and honor traditions. I come from Guatemala. I have Mayan and European blood at the same time. So when I'm making a traditional stew, that makes me think, what am I doing with the things that I have that I want to show heritage and honoring, but I'm not like a fully Mayan person. So does that make it authentic? I don't know. And then I think about honoring the processes, honoring the history, and trying to connect with that instead of trying to like follow a box and make sure that I tick all of that. Another example that makes me think about authenticity in food is the black bean tostadas that we brought today. That is a traditional Guatemalan recipe, but there is an amazing Dominican lady making Guatemalan recipe in a Colorado kitchen from a Guatemalan American person. However, it tastes authentically like Guatemalan black beans should be. So maybe I have more questions than answers. I'm sorry.
I'm clearly in good company because I have similar thoughts. First thing I thought of with this question, so we're primarily a farmer's market, and I went to visit another vendor at a farmer's market who makes Indian food last year. And as soon as I came up, another person came up to
You ate it? Oh, they told us to eat the mic.
I did eat it. But the first thing that came to my mind is as soon as I came up for the food, another person came by, not South Asian, said, "Oh, is this like something you would eat at your home?" And with me, with this question, I think about authenticity. I agree, right? Like the person who's baking that food is authentic to them, they can determine it. But what I think more about is the folks who are asking authentic, are you using that to say another Indian person's eating here, so Indian food is authentic? Because in my home, we certainly don't grow that or don't eat it that way. But it is some of the most delicious food I've had in Colorado, right? And so with authenticity, I think of allowing the chef to tell that story about why it's authentic to them really helps. And then for us as the ones engaging in eating the source, just appreciating it, learning from it. Like we're both from different states of India, we have different foods, but we both grew up eating this one food in very different ways. So for me, the authentic part was just learning, how do you prepare it versus how do I prepare it? How do I enjoy and appreciate the culture background?
The responses were so amazing. I relate in a way where I think it also, just the word authentic loosely ties to nostalgia. So in every home, however you grew up cooking that dish or brewing that coffee, that's what's authentic to you. So it's very closely related to childhood, how you were brought up. And in this day and age, I feel like the word authentic can be tossed around and have somewhat of both positive and negative connotations, but at the end of the day, we're in the food industry, where it's growing, there's innovation within it, and it's just something that should be embraced. And I agree where it's the individual telling that story through how they create that food, make that food.
I loved all of those responses so much. So many cuisines that I love are represented.
My best friend is Guatemalan, and her mama made us tostadas for her birthday, and I'm finally making that link that was traditional and very authentic. So I'm quite the conservative. I think that authentic food is traditional. I think that all food cultures, especially any food culture, worth their weight in gold. The food is delicious, the food is nutritious, and the food is sustainable. And often, I can judge authenticity based off of those three characteristics. Sometimes, though, of course, someone's food is not my favorite. So, delicious to them eating it, right? But what's really important for me is that when food is authentically prepared, I find that the nutritional value of that food is so powerful because each culture is participating in the same pattern languages of what it takes to build a beautiful baby, of what it takes to build a thriving family. And so when I'm confronted with modern industrial food, no matter who's making it, the authenticity for me is coming in. I'm not concerned about your substitutions, but did you remember to soak those beans, right? Is the corn made with ash? Is it maximalized? Is there broth in it, or did you use water? These are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. And so I do have a real relationship, and I am curious about authenticity because I really value the things that make bodies well.
I have a loud voice as well. I think I do. Wow, it's hard to go last. For me, I think that, well, let me say this. I think that we'll discuss a lot of words tonight that we can all have different definitions for, that we all represent different things. Who is it to define authenticity? I don't know. I mean, I think it is self-actualized for each one of us, but I think in this context, it's story and identity. That's the biggest thing, I think, especially representing Native peoples in the Native community and battling for identity. This day and age, you can find anything online, especially with food. You can find any recipe, but what legitimacy does that have? And what story does that actually tell? For me, in this way, and thinking about what is authentic to me, is the people. That's the most authentic aspect. The ingredient is the most authentic item within that. And I don't think it's fair for us to define that for other people. I think we should all be able to have our voice in what is authentic to us. Especially for me, when I talk about Native foods and having over 500 tribal nations, it's unfair for me to even go to another tribal community and try and tell them what something is because we're both Native. It's for them to share their story. And that's what's the most beautiful aspect of food is story. Food is us, food is identity, and we're all looking for that. And so I think at the end of the day, we sit at a table, we share food, but we share ourselves. And I think that that's the most authentic we can be, is being who we are and sharing that and our stories and coming together. Because the way for us to grow, evolve, make sustainable food systems, make things for the future generations is to share our stories and our identity. And it starts with what we put into our bodies. So that's how I would define that.
Okay, thank you so much. So you're all comfortable with me saying I can make your food better than all of you? That's right. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So, I know. Yes. So this is for Vivi and Sashaline. This is about social media. So how do you represent your food, your cuisine, your culture on social media, and why do you do it? Is it all about having a choreographed dance on TikTok, or is it something deeper?
I am terrified of TikTok. So Convivio Cafe does not have a TikTok. It's overwhelming. I think that the way that we try and communicate through images and through text is how do you present what Convivio means as a bilingual space. So when you look at our social media, it's very clearly in English and Spanish, and then Spanish and English, because we are a fully bilingual cafe. And I want to make sure that that represents our brand. But also, you will see a lot of coffee, food, and people. There aren't really a lot of stock photos of Guatemalan tostadas anywhere. So all the photos that we share of the food and the drink that we make are our food and things that we're making and things you can take with an iPhone, or when you have a really nice friend that's a photographer and comes and does, food shoots for you. But I feel like what we want to convey is the reality and the simplicity of what Convivio tries to do, which is connecting back to the producers and the ingredients and the communities and back to store.
So Tea Cafe is run by 3 sisters. I'm one of 3 sisters. Middle sister is who runs our Instagram platform, and the number one thing we get all the time is, oh my gosh, who organizes your Instagram? It's so amazing. I'm like, yeah, not me, but it's okay, I participated, whatever, it's fine. So she wishes she could be here to answer this question. She owns it. She's a creative director in the company. Anyways, we fully take advantage of social media. It's easily accessible. It's where we can spread awareness and represent our culture all together. Tea Cafe being a Vietnamese coffee shop, Vietnam is the 2nd largest coffee producer in the world, and I'm sure a lot of people still don't know that. But so Instagram, for us personally, gives us a chance to introduce that to the world and also showcase how we use beans directly sourced from Vietnam in our product, in our coffee, in our drinks, and that's something that we're proud to present to the world if it's through social media.
Besides obviously being perceptively, enjoyable, do you think people find depth within, what you're trying to convey through social media? Like, do they see your Instagram and be like, wow, this is a cafe, they do very traditional, like they find like a little bit more soul to it versus being perceptively enjoyable?
I think I would say there is a percentage, especially when it comes to 2nd or 3rd generation Tapies, which is for Guatemalans, that see themselves and connect with us to that. So I think that there is that link to people that don't know that we are out there and that they find and see themselves and are excited to feel like they can identify with Convivio. So I feel like that is a really small segment, but it's totally worth it because that's why we're here.
So so we don't follow the trends on TikTok purposely because that's not what we're about in Cafe. So in Case, our way of using social media is that we showcase how we brew our coffee. We don't have an expensive espresso machine, luckily, thank goodness, but we use what's called bean filters, and they're just individual little metal canisters, if you will. And then you put a tamper in, and it just slow drips coffee. Like, I don't know how many pho restaurants you've been to, and you've had that Vietnamese coffee, and it's dripping super slow, but that's how we drip our coffee, and that's almost the authentic side of how we brew it. That's what we know growing up is we're waiting for that. We're waiting for it to drip over that condensed milk. And we showcase that on our Instagram, as well as, again, talking about our beans. We use Robusta beans. That's something that we stand by, which is very different from what's more commonly used, Arabica. And so yeah, by spreading the knowledge of using Robusta beans, number one, it's a higher caffeine content. So if you've had Vietnamese coffee, you know it's so strong, super strong. You're awake for like a month. So yeah, so we use that to spread knowledge, educate as well.
So this question's for the farmers on the panel. So Vanita, I'm gonna ask you this question first. So we now can get ingredients from pretty much anywhere in the world and try to grow it in Colorado. So what does it mean to do that? Does it somehow change that ingredient? I just would love your perspective as a farmer on what that means, especially for this concept like terroir, right? We hear that with wine and other, but I hear more people applying that to food. So talk to us about that.
Since the actual farmers in the audience will remind people I'm not the one who actually grows. However, when it comes to decision making and like deciding what we're going to grow, I'm a part of that. So, I mean, I think the term culturally relevant cuisine or like foods or ingredients is what comes to mind for me. And so when I think about that, as far as what we're doing on our farm to select what seeds that we're growing, some of the seeds just have a lot of history and meaning to us individuals. Others have meaning to maybe our CSA members, market folks, like folks that we've talked to on a regular basis. And so some of the for me, storytelling really comes up. So some of the stories that I think of, we grow Hungarian hot wax peppers. That is not something that's typically found in Colorado, but we know that there are some people who just have like that very happy face of being like, my grandma has this one recipe. I never thought I could buy this locally. This is awesome, right? Why we chose to grow Hungarian hot wax peppers, whether it's because we've learned it from a different farmer or because we read about it and thought, this is very similar to the cuisine for where my partner's really background comes in, his cultural identity. So those are the ways that I think about it in terms of why we may take an ingredient from somewhere else into Colorado. If it can be either from a lens of this is going to be something necessary for our community that rarely gets to see it here, or the other story. The South Asians, there's several traumatic vegetables, but one of them is Loki or bottle gourd. We've been growing it for a few years, and it's a very hard sell. But amongst South Asians, there are the folks who are like, this is traumatizing. I had it every single day for every single meal for years. It's the cheapest vegetable, and it does not taste well. Or you have the person who's like, I haven't talked to my parents in 20 years, and I remember this thing, and it's just so hard to find locally, right? So in terms of like taking ingredients from elsewhere, bringing it to Colorado, whether there's already a community here who doesn't see it here, or a community who doesn't know about it. So if you've been at farmers markets with me and see several faces, I've sent you a long text being like, here are 15 recipes of how you can use bottle. Because I just want somebody else to appreciate it as much as I did growing up with it. And then we've had several people who are like, I purchased it, I took the recipes, and they learned a lot more about that cuisine, because it's all over Asia, not just South. So I think about that a lot in terms of what it means. But as far as a farmer, if we don't tell that story of what is the seed, where is it from, what's the background, what's the cultural relevance, we lose out on that storytelling. And so that's where we have a lot of responsibility with our team to say, not only like, yes, we have peppers from this state or this country, but what is it, like, what's the significance of it in that culture?
Pass the mic to Asia. Asia, so I want to ask you this question. What does it mean to have traditional foods? Well, let me ask it. What is the impact of traditional foods on health equity? And if you could define health equity for folks before you get that answer, that would be great.
Yeah, defining health equity. There are many marginalized groups in this country and all over the world. And their marginalized status, that is, they're being exploited. Rather that's because they're farm laborers, maybe they are lower class people, maybe English is their second language. There's a lot of reasons, but those reasons lead to them having an unequal access to the things that provide them with well-being. The fact that female-bodied people live in systems of patriarchy means that the research is lagging behind on all of the issues that are most important to us. And so there is an inequity in our access to healthcare providers who marginalize the things that we are saying. Having a body from West Africa, like mine is, having to interface with medicines designed for Europeans means that when I go to get my vitamin D tested, the test itself was not created for people with melanated skin and misdiagnoses me. Specific components of our identity means that we are interfacing with the systems that provide us with nourishment in different ways. And if we have been traditionally marginalized and have had our labor exploited or our land stolen, then that means we may not even have the economic resources to fully ennoble the cultures where we come from. And so to circle back to the relationship between traditional food and health equity, what I know to be true is that who our ancestors were matters to the way that we interface with food. Bodies of equatorial descent are far more efficient at converting beta carotene into vitamin A, for example, which means that having access to lots of fresh fruits and vegetables are actually more beneficial for people from equatorial regions because evolving, our ancestors had plant matter the entire year. Okay? So having access to our cultural foods as a Black woman, one of my favorite cultural foods that's really hard to grow here in Colorado is okra. Traditionally, I might be able to have okra stew every single week for the rest of my life, and my body really loves all of that soluble fiber, baby. Okay, but because I am here, the primary form of my okra is frozen. But because I have maintained that cultural knowledge, I can still call on the okra medicine. I could still use okra to help to move my bowels or bulk the stools. I have that ancestral relationship. As long as I continue to enact my culture, I can keep my body healthy and well, even though the transatlantic slave trade meant that I had to change out my African yam for sweet potato. The pattern language of eating my roots has not disappeared, right? Even though the primary source of vitamin A in the West African diet is what? Who knows? Red palm oil, baby. And so the foods that really help me to get that traditional amount of vitamin A is also going to be packed in that yam. And so for me, one of the reasons why I am a stalwart for authentic cultural food prepared in the cultural way as best as you possibly can is because in every single one of our cuisines is the pattern language for how to survive in our bodies, irrespective of what science has to say about it, what's on trend, right? And that's why it matters to creating more equity, making sure that different communities have access to enacting their cultures through food, irrespective of their ability to access the traditional food system. They should still be able to cook with their traditional fats, not canola. I don't care, I don't like it, period, right? They should be able to access their traditional fats. They should be able to access also their traditional food preparation methods. Shortcuts hurt us. If you don't marinate your meat, there's actually a consequence for that, okay? And so for me, health equity also means being able to enact our traditional cultures. And those traditional cultures usually have the exact things that we need to survive. I can go on about sickle cell anemia and the foods and the specific compounds and yam that help to combat it. I can go on and on and on. And as much as I know about my culture, there's so much more about all of y'all's culture too. And that's why I really believe that continuing to grow foods that struggle even in this climate, just to make sure that someone can taste that DNA memory and resonance, I think it's worth it.
Does anybody else want to reflect on this before we go to the next
Just
subject? Go
a
ahead.
quick question. It's about the microphone. Thank you. Where does okra come from?
Yeah, so okra is indigenous to West Africa. Cotton is too, but cotton is shared with India, eh? Rice is also indigenous to both Asia and West Africa, Senegal specifically. The Jola people, that's why they have the best Jola rice. Anyways, so many of our most beloved foods are actually indigenous to West Africa. Watermelon as well.
Black eyed peas.
Black eyed peas. Okay, so there's a reason why soul food continues to hold those ingredients as sacred, because they really truly are.
One thing just to add to what you were talking about in terms of eating food that's ancestrally relevant to us, one of the most prevalent forms that we all consume pretty commonly is tortillas, like with the nixtamalization of corn. And that's a process that, like, you know, our ancestors figured out, but made it more bioavailable, or excuse me, made the nutrition in the corn more bioavailable for us to consume on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Can you give a short explanation of that process, just so people know what that
Yeah, so essentially what you do is you talked about ash, which is beautiful. I'm glad that you know that. You essentially create an alkaline solution. One form is with ash, another form is with calcium hydroxide that you boil corn with, you let it soak overnight, and then the next day you wash the outer skin of the corn around like 50% to where you still have some of that pericarp present along with the starches, along with the proteins within the corn itself. And then you mill that traditionally on a metate, which is like a volcanic stone, kind of like mortar and pestle situation. I guess, what is it? Contemporarily, it's done with volcanic stones. So like the heat with the water, the starches, they kind of create this beautiful masa, and you can do your tortillas with, or tamales or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anybody else want to weigh in before we go to the next question? Okay.
I was just gonna say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm with you on okra every week. We had a lot of troubles with okra this year, and we only harvested a pound. And I literally said, "We're not selling this." So I'm with you on that.
Yes.
All right, this one's for Alberto and Van. So what you just said is a perfect segue. So, and I think this is a reflection of social media and restaurant culture, but there's this push to make things contemporary, these traditional processes. So by doing that, are you assimilating? Are you adapting? Are you doing something else? What are your thoughts on making things contemporary?
Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
I'll start off with the assimilating part because that kind of has a negative connotation. I think you're only assimilating when you're preparing traditional food when you want to please those outside of your culture, or you want to stick to a trend that's popular on TikTok. That's where I feel like you kind of like falter and like you fall short of what that tradition is. From a chef standpoint, for better or for worse, the way that kitchens are structured now is a very much like European brigade system is what it's called, created by Escoffier. You have like your different hierarchy with head chef, sous chef, CDC, et cetera, but it's meant for efficiency and it's meant to be able to feed 200 people more or less with ease. And I say that because I talked about the metate, which is you have a metate sloped volcanic stone and then a metapil, which is a big volcanic, essentially like almost looks like a bat, but you're essentially creating any kind of like ground item. You can create flour from rice to make horchata on there. You can put a heating element under there to create emulsified cacao and make chocolate bars. You can make mole paste from that. And in the contemporary setting, you just have a Vitamix, you have a blender. You know, there's definitely positives and negatives to, you know, creating something a little bit more, what was it? It wasn't assimilating, it was...
Adapting.
Adapting, exactly. Yeah, so you're adapting your kitchen to flow a little bit better, and for efficiency, it does work out. But yeah. Did I answer that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just follow up on you very quickly, and we'll go to management.
Yeah.
So, but you know, if you open a restaurant, you're running a business, right? You need to make money.
Totally.
You're not in the place where you are. You're in a new place. So, don't you have to adapt somewhat for the local taste in order to stay open as a business? Or maybe you don't have to.
That's a great question.
Every once in a while.
That's a great question. At the end of the day, I think people confide more in you than your food, and you speak to your food as best as it speaks to you. So the tradition that you have, as long as you carry that like within your heart, and it's, you know, like, and therefore in your food, people are gonna like notice that. But if you're doing like, what's a trend right now? I can't even think of one right now.
Yeah, what's a trend right
It's
now?
a food trend right now.
I'm trying to think
super
of one.
goofy.
Well, birria, right? Birria, quesadilla.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very northern Mexico style of food. But yeah, like, I don't know, smash burgers. I've seen a taco shop do a smash burger, and it's like, is that really authentic? I'm not too sure. I think that's more assimilating your beautiful taco shop to, you know, cater to a certain crowd.
Okay. What do you thought?
I'm gonna answer both of your questions, that one too. I struggle with the verbiage on that. Again, I'll talk about my experience, the community that I come from and I represent. Assimilation is a very difficult thing because it's forced. And I think that's incredibly unfair, not you asking it, but just if that's how people see it, is if we grow, then we're assimilating. We're forced to do that. I'm still also kind of torn with adapting. The way that I'm thinking about this, you know, in the moment, is I think that it is progress. That's the way that I like to look at it. Because for us, talking about the restaurant, what we always started with was we said we want to break the romanticized image of what people see as natives. Hollywood created this image. Do I fit that? Probably not. I've been considered, like, people have thought I've been Latino my whole life, you know? And that's great, that's fine, but like then it opens dialogue. When we say assimilation, we say these other things, it's like, when people come to the restaurant, so I may jump around a bit because I want to touch on a few things. People would come in the restaurant and they would say, I want what they ate 300 years ago. So you're forcing us to be a relic of the past. You're not allowing us to progress. And it goes with the Vitamix, a great example. To think that we can't grow and evolve and utilize technology and become a competitive force within culture is crazy to me. So like if an outside person comes in and says, well, you're just assimilating, it's like, no, we're surviving. We're here. We've always been here. Like we're here telling the story right now. I sit in a very beautiful, fortunate position where I get to travel to tribal communities and share the words of those people that don't have a voice. Like that's a very empowering thing. And for someone to say, oh, what you're doing is you're just assimilating into a dominant culture is, excuse my language, fucking bullshit. It's unfair to us as people. It's unfair to us around the way. Now to say in a restaurant setting, when we started the restaurant, most people don't know this, but I ended up in Denver because my mother got a job at the Denver Indian Center when I was a kid. That's how I ended up here. I've been ingrained in the local Native community since I was a child. But in 1989, my parents opened a restaurant on the 16th Street Mall called Gray Horse American Indian Eatery. And they were pushing for the progress of Native cuisine, but sharing culture and identity through food. In the 80s.
That's tight.
when people were, as I always say, stuck in the TV dinner fast food generation. We were trapped, and they were like, we're going to push for cultural cuisine, who we are, what we represent. In the 80s, we took that on from them because what we saw is there's Native peoples everywhere. Denver has a huge Native population. We're a relocation city. If you know what that is, during Indian relocation in the 1950s, pulling tribal people from different tribal communities into urban settings to further take away land and provide false promises in an urban setting. It created these densities, LA, Chicago, New York, Denver, Dallas. So anyways, Denver has a large thing. We were saying, well, why is Native food not readily available in my city? It has to be at a family gathering, a meeting, an organization. Why do we not have a voice in the culinary? Well, why don't we create what my parents had done? Why don't we bring that back? Why don't we have a place? I always relate this to, because I love Ethiopian cuisine. I've had friends since I was little that took me there. What I kept thinking was like, if you are from half the world away, you can go somewhere and feel safe and at home in food. And I'm right here, and I don't have that. They can also share their culture, their identity, their traditions. We need to do that. So we created the restaurant as a space to share. We say it's a community-driven experience. It's for all of us to create. It's for everyone, but it's told from our place. Now, to answer your second question, is what I always say is we have to, well, all the communities we come from, in business, we have to ride a very, very fine line of being culturally motivated, culturally connected, culturally aware, culturally relevant in everything we do. But we have to stay business motivated to perpetuate our visions and our philosophies for the future. That's what my parents did and created me on a path to be in food for the rest of my life of what I do. So we're setting the stage for others, but we have to compete. Like that's the thing, is sometimes we're told we're almost not allowed to compete. We're not allowed to thrive, to survive. And like that frustrates me. And if we do things and we do adapt and we grow and we evolve and we compete, then it's almost like you're pushed back down. You need to be that relic of the past. Oh, you're just assimilating, you're doing this for the dominant culture. No, we're doing it for us. And what at the end of the day is, we're doing it for you. We're doing it for everybody. And what we're doing at the same time is taking back the ability to tell our story. And that's incredibly important. So you can see, I will be honest, we got these questions in advance. I was struggling on this, but I am ranting at this point. But
No, you're weaving. You're just
I'm weaving. I'm doing the weave, yes. But I was glad it was given in advance because it gave me the moment to reflect on why the words are, like we have to think about that and how it does actually impact people. And I think that's really important. So all of that to say that I think that what we need to do, all of us, is we need to represent the progress of what was created. And this is the last thing I want to say, and I swear I'll stop talking, is that one thing that I always emphasize to people from a native lens, because we cook fry bread, there's a very difficult conversation between fry bread, and later we can chat about that. But what I always talk about is when you take people and you force people into a place that they are unfamiliar with, they no longer have their environment. They no longer grow, they no longer hunt, they no longer forage, they don't have those abilities and they're given something. We are neglecting the fact that at that time the women in our communities used traditional historical knowledge, cultural knowledge, to take things they did not understand and create food so that we can continue. That is progress. It's growing. It's surviving. And if in this context it's adapting, but what it's doing, it's using knowledge. They weren't assimilating. What they were doing is they were surviving. And so what we've done since then is create all these opportunities to continue to perpetuate that. And I look forward to seeing that evolve in all of our communities because we need that voice and that platform to tell our stories from a very honest perspective, which I believe everyone here does, and there's so many others that do the same. I will step off my soapbox and I will stop talking.
That's all right. We're here for it. Thank you. All right, so we're almost out of time. This has flown by. I knew it would. So, final question. Everybody just take a few moments to answer this question. What can we do to have a more unified city where diversity, culture, food are all showcased in a meaningful way?
I think you should just make yourself uncomfortable and go to that restaurant that you always drove by and never felt comfortable going into. If it's, again, like you said, Ethiopian restaurant, if it's, I can't even think of any other one, but like go down Federal. There's just so much out there. Like me and my brother, we stopped at a little like swap meet situation and we went to this Mexican spot inside the swap meet itself. And there was just like this food from Puebla, which is just crazy. Like it was extremely authentic and it was absolutely delicious. But yeah, kind of just get weird with it, you know. Like, step out of your comfort zone. Don't go to Chipotle. Go somewhere else.
I would say, as a small business co-owner, find ways to collaborate. I feel like this is magical because all of us are running 24/7, you know, we have most of us the same hours, and it's very, very seldom that we get to connect as business owners. And we have met some of our most amazing, you know, peers through collaboration and through asking questions and also finding amazing generosity. And I feel like one of my most favorite things, Kristen, my business partner, and I dreamt about having cenas culturales, which is like this really fun thing where you invite a chef and you tell them, we don't really have a kitchen, but cook whatever you can. We'll have 50 people here. And then you have different ages, different neighborhoods, different just people literally rubbing elbows because they want to hear what like somebody like Alberto and Alejandro have to offer. And that just highlights the beauty of the diversity that we have.
Does anyone need the mic? We'll pass it down if you feel like you need it.
I think we're good now.
Okay.
I agree with both of you. And it's like I'm trying to think of a different lens of storytelling is so important and it's so hard to do when you're running your own business, right? Like you're essentially supposed to be a specialist without saying no time and so many different things. But the one thing you could do if you are going out to eat, getting weird, blah, blah, I also recommend Parker Road and Aurora. But like telling your stories, post. It doesn't matter if you, I mean, obviously if you're into social media, because that's a whole nother thing. But if you don't mind, tag folks, talk about it with people, invite them to your lunches with your organizations, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the one piece that's so hard to invest money into. And like one of our friends every single year is like, are you gonna get swag? He's like, we don't have money for swag. Of course, like there's a lot more to it, right? You have to think about it, you have to do all this other stuff, whatever. Truly, is there money there? Yes, but there's so much more elements to that one simple question that could get the story out. And so that piece kind of comes out for me quite a bit as far as like a unified city. And then the other part is like be willing to learn the names. It's just so frustrating going to an Indian restaurant and hearing people being like, oh, this is like a pancake. Like, just leave. You don't have to pronounce it correctly, right? Because we don't know how to pronounce things when we're going to places that are outside of our comfort zone. But at least be willing to just not name it as something that you, like, you're essentially erasing all of the history, all of the storytelling the owners are trying to do, the chefs are trying to do, and making it as something else. So if you are going to tell the story, also just tell the story that they're trying to tell, right? Like either post a photo and tag them, or you can say like, I learned today about nixtamalization, or like whatever it might be, and encourage folks to go there. But truly spend your dollars with small business owners. The hole in the walls are great. Yep.
I always say there's so much room for growth here in Denver, whether it's diversity or just more restaurants. But the ones that are established, like that's the one to go support because they're trying to reach out to everyone and show representation on their culture, their community. We Roti Cafe, we purposely put our menu, most of the drinks in Vietnamese to force people to say it. So when they come in, they're like, can I get a cafe sữa, which is our Vietnamese iced coffee? And they do. And it's really exciting to see that everyone is trying, especially when they step foot in there. They're willing to learn. They're willing to see what we have to offer, and it's exciting. And then in addition, just attending and immersing yourself in different festivals that are being brought about. Lunar New Year was passed as an official holiday, so that was exciting, and that brings about Mid-Autumn Festival and different cultures and exciting events that you can attend. So there are things like that as well, instead of just going into a brick and mortar.
So I want to give a shout out to the Center for Community Wealth Building. I am a board member. And what I really want you to do is not just shift your individual purchasing, but I want you to shift your institutional purchasing. There's a really great sort of resource called Shop BIPOC. Every single year, I place an order with Tocabe and make sure that we're putting in 40 orders at a time to make sure that these organizations have the ability to make larger amounts of money. And so it really takes a lot of resource, time, and energy that people of color have been denied historically. And so there is a gap in the resourcing. And one of the ways we fill that gap in resourcing is bringing the big money from the university and the big money from the hospital and the big money from the office space to these little places. That's one of the ways that we could really start to give more life to no more Panera for the no. Okay? So use the Shop BIPOC resource. Please shift your business purchasing, your institutional purchasing to these smaller organizations, because that really changes the game for us to be able, well, not for y'all, to be able to have like those larger contracts. It really gives small businesses more stability and sustainable financing. And there's more, but institutional purchasing.
I think going off of what everyone said, and maybe to sound like the old man in the room, I think dialogue is like one of the most important things that we could do. I just related to the work that we've done and how we set up our restaurant from day one. Is people are like, we don't know about stuff. You know, and I always say, like, well, it's not a museum. We don't put plaques on the wall. If you want to know stuff, like, let's talk. It also is very empowering for the people that work with us. You know, young crew members, being a young Native person and not feeling like you can necessarily share, like, it's the space that they can open up and flourish, and it's all due to conversation and dialogue, communicating with one another. We're going in, like, the future is happening rapidly, and it's really easy to feel sheltered in, be like, well, I'm afraid to ask these questions. Like, it's okay, and I think it's really important. And the reason I say that is because I like to do the same thing. I like to go into a place and be like, can you tell me about what you've done? Like, I'm so inspired about what you're doing, but I want to hear it. I want to talk about it. I want to have connection, and I think that is really important for all of us moving forward. So I think to find a way is to actually come together. Like, this is a beautiful experience to have people that are willing to sit and share and being unafraid. And the last thing I would say is I like to share this because, again, I've been fortunate to travel and I've been around the world. And when I was in college, I studied abroad in South Africa because I wanted to feel what it was like to be the only one that looks like me. How do other people feel? But I also was really interested in, like, their existence as, like, tribal people and the languages and things. Very, very life-changing thing. But from the food side and the restaurant side, and going and experiencing restaurants and having conversations, I was sitting in a little place and there were 3 women cooking and laughing and speaking languages that I didn't know or understand. And how I always describe it to people is the beauty of being welcomed in the world is in the bottom of a hot pot. And, like, that's all we have to do is, like, go to the place on Federal, go to the farmer's market, go somewhere and just sit down and enjoy what they've created and maybe ask them about who they are. And that's how we make a better place, living space for all of us.
Cool, thank you. That's great. I just want to add one more thing. One thing that I've noticed over the last couple of decades is sourcing, right? When we go to a restaurant, we know the farm that our vegetables are coming from. We know where the animals were raised. We know their personal habits, what they loved, right? But often the food that's presented, especially from another person's culture, is not given any context. So I'm pushing, let's culturally source. So on the menu, say a little bit about where that item is from, give some context. If you're doing shrimp and grits, say that that's from the Gullah culture of the Low Country in the Carolinas, that it's African in origin. Your servers should tell that story as well. So I'm pushing cultural sourcing as well as, and it's another form of storytelling. So I want to thank our panelists for what they've brought tonight. Thank you so much for your time, your insights, your expertise. And like Ben was saying, let's keep the conversation going. So please connect with these panelists, find out what they're doing on social media or other places. Please stop by and support their endeavors. And thank you again so much for what you all brought tonight. I'm going to give it back to Lily.
I will try the mic.
Thank you all so much. I hope you all have taken as much from this as I have and are just feeling into the inspiration. And as you said, let's continue this conversation. It is not done. I could listen to all of you for hours, but I appreciate the time that you have offered to us tonight. Thank you so much. I'm excited to announce that our next Fed workshop will be at Convivio Cafe. Tickets just went on sale on December 5th, and she will be talking about coffee, Guatemalan coffee. So from that, please, thank you so much for coming tonight and for being part of this conversation. And we are going to try and get ourselves out of here in the next 20 minutes or so, just so that Patagonia is able to clean up and go home after their long day of working as well. So thank you for coming out. Take care.